Unbelievable Crimes of 2022, Shocking U.S. Cases Part 1. Case 1, Tops Supermarket Shooting, Buffalo, New York. On May 14th, a gunman opened fire at the Tops Supermarket in Buffalo, New York, killing 10 people and injuring 3 others. 19-year-old Peyton Gendron claims he targeted the shop and area as it was the closest one to him with the highest black percentage.
I seen a guy in a full army suit just shooting shots at people, and I seen a security guard running the store, and then I seen the guy go in army style, bent over, just shooting at people, and I heard him shooting at people, and then I saw 3 people laying down, and I didn't have a phone on me, so I was just screaming for somebody to call the police, and then he came out.
Gendron was armed with a semi-automatic rifle and dressed in bullet-resistant tactical gear, wearing plated armor and a helmet when the event took place. Even more shocking, though, is that he wore a camera and live streamed the event. Gendron characterizes himself as a fascist, white supremacist, and anti-Semite. He pleaded guilty in November 28 to 15 criminal charges, including to 1 count of domestic act of terrorism motivated by hate, 10 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted murder, and a weapons possession charge for the mass shooting. Evidence presented in the case include numerous social media posts demonstrating his racial attitude, as well as a lengthy document that Gendron posted detailing that he would commit this attack. He had even visited the supermarket, which is about 200 miles or 3.5 hours of a trip from his home, on multiple occasions to plan it. Emotional scenes were encountered when the victim impact statements were written out. Christopher Braden, one of the victims who was one of the survivors of the attack, now suffers from PTSD and night terrors. He stated that he is haunted every day by the visions of the events. Barbara Mapps, the sister of Catherine Massey, a 72-year-old who was killed in the massacre, was one such case. In fact, it had such an emotional impact that Barbara's son tried to take matters into his own hands in the courtroom. It was at this shocking moment in the case was when her son launched himself at Gendron, shouting, "I want personally to choke you." He would have attacked Gendron due only for being intercepted by security. The man was not charged for this minor event, and once the court had settled down, Erie County Court Judge Susan Egan handed down a life sentence. Gendron is still at risk of being handed the death penalty for federal hate crimes. However, his defense attorney stated that Gendron is willing to plead guilty if prosecutors agreed to remove the death penalty. Case 2, Uvalde School Shooting, Texas. On May 24th, just 10 days after the Buffalo Massacre, another tragic shooting event took place, this time in Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. An armed gunman made his way into a classroom and opened fire on a class, killing 19 students aged between 9 to 11 years of age and 2 teachers. 18 people were also injured during the heinous attack. Salvador Ramos, a former student at Robb Elementary, was just 18 years old when he entered the school. But his shooting rampage was launched that day before he even reached the school. Ramos had argued with his grandmother that day over his failure to graduate high school. Evidence from the case reviewed text messages from the shooter that day. He was texting a girl he met online from Germany. In 3 messages that Ramos sent, he claimed that he was going to shoot his grandmother. The next text stated that he had shot his grandmother, and the 3rd message wrote that he would then go shoot an elementary school. About 10 minutes after that text, he lived up to his word. His grandmother managed to call 911 and was in critical condition from her gunshot wound. Ramos drove to the school after shooting his grandmother, crashed his grandmother's truck through a barricade and into a concrete ditch. At 11:28 a.m., he then fired some shots outside the school towards 2 men who came over looking to see what had happened. Ramos entered the school at 11:33 a.m. wearing a tactical vest that held extra ammo and carrying an AR-15 style rifle. Ramos then barricaded himself in adjoining classrooms where he opened fire, shooting over 100 rounds, killing all the students and teachers in the room in a matter of minutes. 7 officers were on the scene within minutes of being tipped off by a teacher who saw Ramos shooting outside the school. A stakeout for about 30 minutes took place in the hallway outside the classroom as more and more armed forces made their way to attack the gunman. The number eventually rose to a total of 19 officers at the school. It took a specialized tactical team over an hour to finally making an entry into the classroom, a factor that led to uproar and heavy criticism by families of the victims. Once they had entered at 12:50 p.m., they fatally shoot the gunman. Outraged and distressed onlookers considered entering the school themselves to confront the shooter, as they felt the police were wasting too much time. Some family members of victims of the tragedy are suing the local prosecutor's office and the manufacturer of the firearm. A minimum of 2 officers were subsequently fired, while a couple of other officers resigned or were placed on leave. During the investigation, it was discovered that Ramos bought 2 AR-15 platform rifles and 375 rounds of ammunition legally for his 18th birthday, the week before the massacre. He even posted photos of these guns on his Instagram page. According to people who knew him, Ramos, who lived with his grandparents, was considered a loner with a limited social life and was frequently bullied at school. Extreme pressure and publicity surrounding the event ensued, even with celebrities such as Matthew McConaughey speaking out about the event and pleading for changes to the gun laws.
Nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut and need?
Congress signed a bill into law on the 25th June 2022, making it easier for police to confiscate firearms and stop the purchase of weapons. It also enforces tighter background checks on the person purchasing the firearm. Case 3, Highland Park shooting, July 4th. On the fateful day of July 4th, 2022, the bustling Highland Park in Chicago became the site of a heinous act of violence. Amidst a vibrant parade, 21-year-old Robert Crimo III unleashed terror on innocent bystanders with a semi-automatic rifle that he had purchased legally years before. The brutal attack claimed the lives of 7 victims, leaving 48 others injured and traumatized, ranging in ages from 8 to 88 years old. From the top of a rooftop, which Crimo gained access to via an unsecured ladder on the Ross Cosmetics building, the gunman rained down bullets on the unsuspecting crowd. The chaos unfolded at 10:14 a.m., sending shockwaves through the city. Despite the swift arrival of over 100 law enforcement officers on the scene, the assailant managed to evade capture, escaping with a second semi-automatic rifle in his car. However, the weapon he used to commit the heinous act was recovered by police mere moments after falling from his bag as he fled. The search for Crimo III was on, as the nation mourned the senseless loss of life.
But this morning we learned he thought about possibly carrying out a second attack in the Madison area. That came through an admission he made to police when he was being interviewed before he was charged, and police say he did have another rifle in his car, 60 rounds of ammunition there in his car with him as well, as he drove past a celebration in the Madison area.
Despite a massive police response, Crimo managed to escape, abandoning his weapon as he fled the scene and drove towards Madison, Wisconsin. His decision not to carry out a second attack on the parade there remains a mystery. It wasn't until a vigilant driver alerted authorities to Crimo's whereabouts that he was finally apprehended by Chicago police in Lake Forest, Illinois, at around 6:30 p.m. During questioning, the killer confessed to his heinous crimes. The chilling and disturbing details of the investigation into Crimo reveal that he had meticulously planned his attack weeks before executing it. He even went to the extent of wearing women's clothing and makeup to blend in with the crowd and conceal his tattoos. Although the motive for the massacre remains unknown, online investigations reveal Crimo's disturbing affinity for far-right and neo-fascist ideologies, as well as concerning indications of mental health issues and violent tendencies. Shockingly, he had even shared videos of mass shootings and videos depicting his own death, indicating a disturbing fixation on violence and hatred. Raised in a turbulent household, Crimo's upbringing was far from stable. Police records show a distressing number of visits to their residence between 2009 and 2014, with almost half of them in response to reports of domestic violence. But that was just the beginning. Police had 2 disturbing run-ins with Crimo himself. The first was in April 2019, when a 911 call was placed to report a suicide attempt. The second was in September of that same year, when police responded to claims that Crimo had threatened his own family, saying he wanted to kill them all. On that occasion, police confiscated a cache of 16 sharp-edged weapons from the young man, but no charges were pressed. Nevertheless, they did make a note of a clear and present danger on his file. Despite this clear warning sign, Crimo's father, Robert Crimo Jr., helped his son acquire a gun license 3 years before the deadly shooting. Even though there were concerning comments on his file, Crimo passed all background checks with flying colors. Astonishingly, the Highland police could have taken out a restraining order, but they chose not to. Instead, Crimo got his gun license approved in January 2020, a mere 4 months after he applied for it. In a stunning revelation, it was discovered that none of Crimo's own family members raised any concerns about his mental health or the threats he had made towards them when he applied for his firearm license. Had they done so, it could have potentially prevented the tragedy that followed. Robert Crimo III, the perpetrator of the heinous crime, was indicted in July 2022 on multiple charges, including 7 counts of first-degree murder, 48 counts of attempted murder, and 48 counts of aggravated battery. He is currently being held without bond in Lake County Jail, awaiting trial. His father, who helped him obtain his firearm owner's identification card, has also been charged with 7 counts of reckless conduct, 1 for each of the victims who were murdered. Crimo Jr. was shockingly caught on camera smiling during his court case. Despite pleading not guilty, he was released on a $50,000 bond. If you enjoyed this video, then please show your support for this channel by liking, subscribing, or leaving a comment with your thoughts on this video.